All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final 2023 Woburn Mayoral Forum. I'm Brian Willett, the chairperson of the WPMC Mayoral Forum Committee. I want to thank you all for coming to this important forum, and also thanks to the people watching on local access television and the live stream. I'd like to thank my fellow committee members, Lauren Coleman, Jennifer Gatta, Anthony Giglio, and Samantha Stone for helping to organize this forum, and also Woburn Public Schools for letting us use this venue. I'd also like to thank our two timekeepers for tonight, John Gagliardi from Billerica, Mass, and Jim Major from Wilmington, Mass. We're here tonight to listen to the two final candidates for mayor of Woburn, so you, the residents of Woburn, can make an informed decision at the polls. The committee would like to ask the audience to refrain from applause after each candidate answers the questions. Please be respectful and don't shout out so all the candidates can be fairly heard. The candidates are, in order on stage, incumbent Mayor Scott Galvin. You can clap for that. And challenger Michael Concannon. As a reminder, Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th, exactly 2 weeks from today. Good luck to both candidates. And I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight. Our moderator is Margaret Copey from Lexington, Mass. She is convener for the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to the principles of self-government established in the Constitution of the United States. The League works to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. Please help me welcome Margaret Copey.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be back with the residents of Woburn and the two candidates for the mayor. A few things before we get going. We will have opening statements followed by questions divided into 4 categories. And then we'll have a question that they've each submitted for their opponent, and then we'll have the closing statements. Each candidate has 3 minutes for opening statement, and they have 2.5 minutes for response to questions with the possibility of a 30-second rebuttal. And the closing remarks are also 3 minutes each. And we drew names at the beginning before you guys were here, and Mayor Galvin will go first for the opening statement. We'll then alternate them, and then Mike Concannon will go first for closing statements, just so that if you need reminding, go ahead. All right, so with that, shall we start with the opening statement from Mayor Galvin?
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being here tonight, and to the Woburn Public Media for sponsoring this debate. The prosperity and future of a city and its residents has always been and continues to be my #1 priority. Under my proven leadership as your mayor, and in collaboration with the City Council, School Committee, department heads, and dedicated municipal employees, we have delivered impressive results for our residents and taxpayers. Woburn has become an increasingly desirable place to live, work, raise a family, and retire. The city has thrived because of strategic investments in education, public safety, parks and open space, infrastructure, energy efficiency, and economic development. From the construction of a $23 million fire headquarters and additional manpower, to the construction of a new library, new elementary schools, and annual budget increases that have exceeded state-mandated levels by 45% or more. From investments in water quality, aging water and sewer lines, and street paving programs, to the construction of new playgrounds and the acquisition of more open space. From becoming a state-certified green community with ever-increasing energy efficiency, to developing and maintaining our strong commercial tax base to benefit all. I am proud and honored to have led the collaboration on this progress. It also means successfully honoring these commitments by professionally managing the city's finances and aggressively pursuing grants and other funding sources to minimize the burden on Woburn taxpayers. It means maintaining our hard-earned AAA bond rating, the highest municipal rating available, and delivering top-notch municipal services while maintaining the lowest tax rate in the area. Over the years, I have successfully negotiated numerous collective bargaining agreements. I've ruled on grievances and disciplinary hearings with our city unions and employees. Decisions that I have made may not always be popular, nor are they easy, but I pride myself that at the end of the day, I have acted fairly and without bias or ethical constraints, always in the best interest of Woburn taxpayers and seniors who live on fixed incomes and not influenced by special interest groups from outside the city, like the Mass Teachers Association, who has a habit of telling us what we need. We have more important work to do with several initiatives in the pipeline and underway. Together, we will remain focused on these issues that strengthen our community. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that our thoughts and our prayers are with our friends and neighbors who have suffered tragic loss during the recent tragedies in the Middle East. And as always, we express our thanks and gratitude to our servicemen and women who continue to protect our freedom and liberty.
You can wrap up.
Thanks. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve as your mayor, and I respectfully ask for your support and vote on Tuesday, May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Let me first say thank you to the Woburn Public Media Center, the high school, the staff here, of course, Ms. Copey for agreeing to moderate, the timekeepers. Thank you to Scott for agreeing to participate in this debate. I thank you to the audience that's here tonight, as well as those watching on TV now and when it's rebroadcast. It really matters that our community participates in democracy, and this is democracy at its core. So thank you very much for your participation and your attendance. I'd also like to say thank you very much to my family for their support. We're about 2 weeks out now from Election Day. It's been a long campaign, I'm sure, for all of us, and I would really like to thank my family, especially my wife. We celebrated our 35th anniversary yesterday. I could not have done anything I have done without her, and I truly appreciate her support. Thank you as well to my friends and my campaign team who have helped me so much over these last several months. Thank you as well to the residents of Woburn. I've been out and about campaigning now for about 7 or 8 months. Been in every neighborhood, every ward. Haven't quite knocked on every door yet, but the feedback I've received has been tremendous. Very supportive, receptive, and welcoming. And it means a lot to me, the feedback I've received and the support. So thank you very much. I would say that it's difficult in these type of forums to have an in-depth, robust, complex answer to a question. But there are other avenues to receive information on the candidates, and I would just urge you to please, if you're still seeking information and answers to questions, to check out the other forums, such as my website, which does include information from the previous mayoral forum, interviews with the media, articles in the newspapers, survey responses that have been put out. There's a million questions that have been asked, and we're not going to be able to hit on all of them tonight, I'm sure. So I would urge you to please check out my website, MikeConcannonforWoburn.com, for more information and more detailed responses. I'm running for mayor because I think I can help our city, the city I love, the city I grew up in. I can tell you that it's a great place to be. As the mayor said, it's a great place to live, work, raise a family, visit. I second that. I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm proud to have played a role in making it so. On the council the last 10 years, I've been instrumental in trying to ensure that we do deliver those great services. I have supported the infrastructure that we built. And as you probably are aware, it is the city council that appropriates the funds for that infrastructure, as it is the city council that sets the tax rate. I think what you'll find tonight is that there isn't a lot of disagreement on what we're doing here in Woburn. But hopefully the questions and the information that comes out will yield that there is a difference in how we do it. And it's the difference between management and leadership. That's what I hope you'll focus on, and that's the reason I'm running for mayor, to bring that level of leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Concannon. And the next 2 questions will be on the topic of education, and we will be starting with Mr. Concannon. How does Woburn's operational school funding compared to other like communities. Please specify what cities you compare us to and why. And you have 2.5 minutes.
Actually, I think Woburn compares pretty favorably to cities in the area. I would say that the comps that we should be looking at are not necessarily Lexington, Winchester, Burlington, any of the wealthy communities. I think the comps would be those similarly situated communities like Woburn. I can tell you this, the Woburn school system right now is not the Woburn school system of 20 years ago, or probably even 15 years ago. It's changing. It's changing dramatically. We are becoming a high-needs educational community, and I think we do a really good job of trying to meet those needs. But it's important that we remain mindful that it is changing. More than 50% of the students in Woburn Public Schools are classified as high needs, whether that is special education, multi-language learners, or those in need of particular services to further their educational opportunities. And again, it's up to us to meet those needs. Not only is it our legal obligation to educate every student in our community, it's our moral obligation. I think, as I said, we compare very favorably to those communities such as Waltham, perhaps Lowell, Beverly, those that are dealing with the same type of influx of high needs and high-need learners. I do think that there is more that can be done, and I think it's important that we listen to our educational professionals as they tell us what they're dealing with each day in the classrooms. The days of a one-size-fits-all reading, writing, arithmetic approach are long gone. We have social, behavioral, and other type needs that need to be addressed, which is why you've seen an increase as of late in our paraprofessionals and our behavioral specialists. We're going to need more and more of those to meet the demands of our community. Again, I would say that the critical things we're facing right now are probably, more than anything, it's the looming fiscal crisis as a result of the loss of ESSER funds, the soon-to-be-released feasibility study, which is going to tell us what our facilities need. And I think it's going to be important that we work collaboratively on those type of issues to make sure that we can continue to meet the needs. All in all, I do think we compare favorably as long as we're putting ourselves up against the appropriate comps. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Galvin, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's good. Thank you. One of the things is, over my time as mayor, I've always been a strong supporter of the schools and education. It's important for the community, it's important for our children, and it's important for our future growth. In working with the City Council and the school committee, we've consistently funded the budget an increase of 4%. When you look around at the communities around us, as Mike said, there are comps. There's a thing called the net school spending. That's what what DESE puts out. They're in charge of education. We're 50% over that figure, that net school spending, and we've consistently exceeded 45% of net school spending over the years. That's an important metric for people to look at. You can check DESE's website. Also, you want to take a look at per pupil spending. And Woburn spends over $20,000 per pupil. And that compares more than favorably to many of the communities in the Middlesex community. So if you want to look at them, I think Burlington and Lexington are ahead of us, but we're far in excess of Winchester, we're in excess of Reading and other communities in the Middlesex area. So you might want to take a look at that. We do a great job funding the schools. The past fiscal year, there was some discontent and noise about we weren't funding the schools, but working with the City Council and the school committee, the funding we provided to the schools this year was in excess of 9.8%. The budget itself went from $74 million to $79 million. We also provided another $1.8 million for out-of-district tuition, which is sometimes runs out of control. But we worked together, Mike. We got that done. We also provided another $600,000 in capital spending. So when you look at the commitment to the schools, it's been very strong and it's been very important, again, for those reasons that we're here tonight. We want to have a strong community. We want to provide an environment that our kids can excel and get ahead, and that's what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just quickly jump in. You twice referenced DESE, D-E-S-E. For those who may not be familiar, that's the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE. So if you want to go look that up. But I have a question for the mayor, and maybe for Mr. Concannon. What percentage of the total town budget goes to schools?
Do you want to go first, or want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. You know, this year it was approaching 50% for the first time, but it's generally right around that area that we're just under 50%. We have a budget of 164 million, and as I said, this year 164 million, and this year the school budget was 79 million, so it's pretty significant.
Right, because you had mentioned, I guess it was the school budget of 79 million, and I didn't know if that was your total budget or just your schools. Mr. Concannon, do you have any comment to make about that?
No,
Okay.
the mayor's numbers are correct. It's 79 million last year out of the total 165 million. Just a further comment, if I could.
Sure.
I do want to reiterate the point about the fiscal cliff with the ESSER funds. The mayor is well aware. We will have a hole in our education budget for this upcoming fiscal year. It's almost November. We need to be talking about that right now. The mayor's office, the city council, the school committee, getting our arms around that, because there's going to be some tough decisions to be made between now and the springtime when we begin the budget
Could you
process.
please explain what you mean by, and I didn't quite hear you.
Sure, there's,
What-
so
what
we
that-
used some federal COVID funds essentially to close the gap in this current fiscal year. And
okay.
that money goes away.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Too many acronyms, Mike, right?
Well, moving on to the next question, we will start with Mayor Galvin. Some in the community worry that new housing development has led to uneven classroom size and investments in our schools. What capital investments in our schools and redistricting will your administration support? And please explain why. Mayor Galvin.
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
Sure. Some in the community worry that new housing development has led to uneven classroom size and investments in our schools. What capital investments in our schools and redistricting will your administration support, and please explain why?
Okay. Well, let me first start with the enrollments in the schools, and one of the things is that the enrollment over the past 5 years has actually gone down. It's not going up. And again, over the last 3 years, it's been static at about 4,300 students. So right now, we're not seeing an increase in population and students, but there is development that we do see on the horizon coming in. There are some developments that when we approved these, or when the City Council approved some of these developments down off of Commerce Way, apartments with 200-plus units, the conventional thinking was that it wouldn't impact schools. It was mainly people single or without children. But we're starting to find that there is a little bit more of an impact with children, so we're keeping an eye on that. I've got a strong record of investing in schools and capital for schools. Since I've been mayor, we've built 2 new schools. We also provide significant annual capital to the schools with the support of the City Council. We do an annual capital appropriation of $600,000. But a couple springs ago, the school committee did commission a feasibility study, a needs study for our capital and what we would need. And right now, we're looking at that closer to see what we're going to be doing for improvements to our schools. So I'm looking forward to that, committed to making the changes that may be necessary to increase our classrooms or additional school buildings, consolidation. But as I said, at this time, there has been no increase in student population. In fact, as I said, if you go back to 2017, we're actually lower than we were then. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon?
Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
To the mayor's point initially, it has been the intention of the city council, as any new developments come forward, to try to do what we can to limit the impact primarily on the schools, but on the infrastructure in general. And the hope has been that we could minimize the number of bedrooms in many of these developments with that goal in mind, so we don't have an influx of students. I do agree that the enrollment numbers are going down, but I think we're going to see an uptick as a result of some of these developments, and it's up to us to figure out the best way to manage that. Scott mentioned the feasibility study that was conducted, and it has not been released yet. I've seen a draft, and I can tell you that there's a lot of issues in there. Just before COVID, I had the opportunity to take a tour of every school facility in the city from top to bottom, and I can tell you that there are some serious issues. And having seen the draft of the feasibility study, I can confirm that. I hope that gets released soon. I hope it's not impacted by the election season. I'd like the public to see it so we can begin the dialogue of what we really need to do to make sure that our school facilities are up to speed. And I do think a part of that could possibly be the need to think outside the box in terms of what buildings we actually need, what buildings we need for what purposes, something along the lines of perhaps combining the middle schools, essentially thinking differently about how we're doing this. And the concept of redistricting might actually be part of that discussion. So I think once that study is released and the community has a chance to look at it, we're going to have some really difficult conversations, and we're going to have to talk about what is absolutely necessary to improve these facilities and bring them up to speed to the level that we all know we want for our children. So I look forward to that. I think that's going to do a lot to drive the conversation about what we do to the buildings and which students we put in those buildings. One thing in particular I think you're going to see referenced is the early childhood education concept, and whether it might be time to create a special, a unique building for the earliest students. I think that's going to play a role in that overall discussion once that study comes to light. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just-
Mayor Galvin?
Just one thing. You know, we have made significant investments in our schools, and going back to when I was on the city council, we've built 5 new elementary schools. We've built a brand-new high school. So we've made significant investments in the capital in our schools. We do have, you know, as Mike referenced, we have 2 middle schools that may need to be addressed, and also a combination of the Alta Vista and the Linscott and North Woburn. But aside from that, there should be some capital needs. But again, these are brand-new schools, basically. 5 new elementary schools and a new high school. So we've done a great job investing in our schools and our community.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon, do you?
I don't disagree that we've made great investments. My concern is that this building, the White School, the Reeves School, they're all nearing 20 years. The question is, have we been doing the required maintenance to keep them up to speed? And again, the feasibility study will come out shortly, and there'll be an opportunity, I hope, for public input where we figure out the plan going forward. So I look forward to that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to the next topic, which is affordable housing, and we will be starting these questions with Mr. Concannon. There are many people in our community who face housing insecurity: veterans, seniors, families facing rising rental costs. How will your administration work with developers and property owners to increase the availability of affordable housing for residents?
Thank you. A lot of the issues surrounding housing are more than something that one local community can solve. I think we all realize that. I was talking earlier tonight with somebody about the nationwide and regional housing issues, and it's not something that Woburn can solve on its own. But there are some things we can do, and I think to a large extent we do them. One of the main things we can do to impact the cost of housing is to keep the tax rate low in our community. At its essence, if we can keep the tax rate down, we can allow property owners not to have to raise rent and pass that along to the renters. I think that's probably one of the biggest things we can do. Another thing we can do is when we do approve these developments that come in, we do require an affordable housing component. There's a 10% requirement per state law. We actually increased that on the city council to 15% to make sure that we surpass the 10% level so that we could at least protect ourselves against unfriendly Chapter 40B developments where the city has zero say in how they come to pass. So we've done those couple of things. In terms of seniors and veterans, I think we do a pretty good job with our senior housing here in town, but I think we should take a look at whether it's time to increase that stock. We have Library Place downtown, you know, a beautiful spot, great location. I think perhaps it's time to think about adding another location, another building down at Library Place to try to meet the need for seniors and veterans specifically. I don't think we necessarily want to be in the housing business, but I think there are some things we can do to increase that stock, and I think there's a need for that. I go back to what I said in the beginning, though. So many of these issues are driven by forces outside of our control, and I think a local municipality like Woburn can really only do so much to impact the amount of affordable housing, and there's only so many levers that local government can apply to the market to have an actual impact. So I think if we do the things that we can do, and we are doing, and we do them well, I think we're doing our part. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Galvin?
Yeah, it is a tricky subject, but you know, one of the things that we've done since I've been mayor is we have created more affordable housing than many communities around us. And that's, you can tell by the stock that we have. Right now, we've got 10% of our housing, at least 10% of our housing is considered affordable housing. Whereas about 8 years ago, it was 7%. We took positive steps. We created a state-sponsored housing production plan, which allowed us to increase our housing stock and get to 10% and over. And as Mike had mentioned, that you do that, we did that so we would be able to determine our own fate as to where housing projects would go. If you were under 10% affordable housing, the state allows developers to bypass local zoning, and they can put a housing project or housing development wherever they want. And you see some of the angst that this has created, and rightfully so. When you look up in North Woburn, we have 168 units towering over Main Street that came in without any zoning approval. But thanks to the efforts we've taken, we've got to 10%, and that will help increase our housing stock, our affordable housing stock. As Mike said, thanks to Joanne Campbell, she took some proactive legislation to increase, when a developer comes in with a housing project, she increased the affordability requirements from 10 to 15%. And also, when the planning board, anytime the planning board comes in, these are some of the things we can do. When the planning board entertains a developer who wants to build a housing project / apartment, they always recommend to the city council that they exceed the 15% and ask for 25% affordability. And what that does, number one, it creates more affordable housing, but number two, when you have 25% of a development, 25% as required for affordable housing, you get that the entire count. So if there's 150 units, all of that 150 goes towards our numbers with the state that represent our affordable housing numbers. So we increase our level over the 10%, which further insulates us from unwanted 40B projects that do a number on neighborhoods. So also with regard to creating
You can finish.
I think we have a very good opportunity. We recently created a substance misuse position in the city, which also works with mental health. But as part of that, we could also have a person who, because when some people are homeless, like veterans or other people homeless, sometimes there is a mental health component there. And we can expand that position to actually help council find resources for these people who are homeless. So there's a real opportunity for us going forward, particularly with that position, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon, did you want to add anything?
I agree with that, with the last statement by Scott. I think we should definitely consider the coordination between that new position and the need for housing. And as he referenced, we are urged oftentimes to increase the number of affordability units in a particular petition, but as is often the case, there is a balance there between what's profitable for the person doing the development. So we have to strike a balance between, getting a development done and seeking as many affordable units as we can. That's that balance we strike on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will start with Mayor Galvin. Woburn Housing Authority manages hundreds of units in our city. However, inventory has not changed in a long time, leading in some cases to long wait lists. Would you support repurposing currently owned public land for the development of new units? Please explain.
Well, that's a very good question. We had explored that. We explored that maybe 8 years ago for senior housing, but again, it's all type of housing that there is a shortage for. But as far as particular land that we would be open to using, I mean, there is the Wyman School, but that's still under the control of the city, and there's certainly neighborhood input that we would take before we would determine the final use there. I do think that we do have an opportunity. We have an affordable housing trust, which has in excess of $4 million. We ended up getting $2 million from a developer, and thanks to the investing acumen of our treasurer, that money has turned into about 4.2, so it's already doubled. But I think there is an opportunity there with our affordable housing trust where we could look at maybe partnering or helping Woburn Housing expand their capacity.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon?
Thank you. I would certainly entertain the discussion about repurposing buildings and/or land, but as Scott said, there are many considerations that go into that. I share his praise for our treasurer, Tim Donovan, and the foresight we had to put some money into the housing trust. That's kind of the seed money I was thinking of in terms of senior housing for Library Place or some other property. We do have a shortage of units here, and we do have a long waiting list. I know because I talk to people all the time who are on that list, and they're wondering if they might ever move up. Fortunately, these are great, desirable units, and I do applaud the WHA for the work they do to maintain them. The problem is there just aren't enough of them. So yeah, I would definitely entertain the discussion, but it would depend on where, when, what is the appetite for the neighborhood in question. Right now, the only real building that would be available is the Wyman School. And again, as Scott was referencing, that is still under the control of the school department. They have yet to tell the city that they no longer need it for educational purposes, and by law, there's nothing we can do with it until they make that determination. I think that's a discussion we have to have sooner or later, and I think it's going to be prompted by the feasibility study that I referenced earlier. The Wyman School figures prominently in that study, so that might be the appropriate time to have that discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go on to the next topic, which is business. And we will be starting with Mr. Concannon on this one. Where in Woburn would you support new business and commercial growth? Please describe the type of businesses you would aim to recruit for each area.
So what area would I like to see more business?
Where, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's one of the things we wrestle with all the time on the city council is the balance between the residential neighborhoods and the right to enjoy peace and quiet in your neighborhood without having business intrude, balancing that with the need to develop new business, increase the tax base, and be able to provide these low taxes that we're so fond of here in Woburn. Specific areas for new growth, I think we're about to see that happening just by way of market forces when we see the new Boston Street Bridge come to be. I think that's going to open up that corridor considerably. It's going to cause people to take another look at it, repurpose a lot of those old buildings. So I think you're going to see a lot of growth in that area. The short answer to your question is I wouldn't want to see new businesses spring up in neighborhoods, but fortunately we have that opportunity in North Woburn, and I know that Casey Haggerty, the Economic Development Manager, is working closely with that area to envision what it might look like going forward and to solicit interest from the types of businesses that we would like to see in the area. Obviously, we're looking for clean businesses, high-paying jobs for Woburn residents. We witnessed the growth of the life science industry. That seems to have cooled off a bit as of late. Hopefully that reemerges. That's the type of business that has minimal impact to our community, significant tax benefits. So I guess the area in my mind would be North Woburn, New Boston Street. The type of business would be the clean, high-paying, low-impact type of businesses. And I think between Casey's efforts, the efforts of the Chamber of Commerce, and the efforts of the council and the mayor's office, I think we're putting out the welcome mat to try to attract those type of businesses into that area.
Thank you. Mayor Galvin.
Yeah, love to see more development in Woburn Center. Working with the council, we took some great steps to make the center more conducive to business. We've added more parking than I think there's ever been added. I think in the city's history, we bought a piece of land right at Main Street in the corner of Salem. We built 60 spots there. When we built the library, we added another 100. So we've added 160 spots to our downtown, which I think which is really conducive to increasing the business down there. And that's a good spot, I think, for more development. Mike mentioned New Boston Street. That's been a long time coming. And during my time as mayor, I sat on the MPO, and that's where we worked to lobby for that money. And the bridge cost $25 million. It's funding from the federal government down to the state, and we lobbied very hard and long to get that. We put in $3 million of our own money, and that's going to be a great economic engine for that area. It'll combine with Anderson Station and really help to continue the revitalization of Commerce Way and New Boston Street. And thirdly, there's a thing called the Mass Biotech Council, and they have a rating for communities that make it easier for biotech manufacturing to come to the city. And through my efforts working with the planning department and the city council, we're one of 39 communities in the state to be rated as a platinum community, which means we welcome and we make it easier for them to get through by means of zoning and different amenities. But we're one of 39 communities to be rated a platinum community, so that's a pretty impressive effort by the city when they rank them from platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. And again, we are one of 39 to be rated as platinum, which is an effort from us to attract those type of businesses that don't have as much impact on residents, and they're good, clean businesses in biotech. So we've done a great job in that respect.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon?
Thank you. I agree that some more efforts are needed downtown. I think we've made great strides to improve it. We've attracted some new businesses down there, but more can be done and should be done. I'd like to see more attention paid to the Woburn Redevelopment Authority. I'd like to see their purview expand a little bit more and see a little more input from them. I know that we're soon to have a traffic improvement program upgrade to the center area, which I think is going to help a lot. And I think when we do that, that's an opportunity to further involve current and future businesses into the revitalization of downtown. So I do agree with that.
Thank you. Mayor, do you have anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question will be starting with Mayor Galvin. How will your administration attract and retain businesses that bring jobs to residents?
Well, I did somewhat answer that in the last question, but it deals with investments we made, and one of the things that we have done through a grant is to hire for the first time an economic development coordinator, and working with the Woburn Redevelopment Authority, we got some funding for that, and that is a paid position by the Woburn Development Authority for 3 years. So that should pay dividends. We're working with Casey Haggerty. She's out of the Planning Board Department, and I meet with her on a weekly basis to discuss challenges that the city is facing, any of her recommendations, or what she thinks will help to attract further businesses. But that's one of the things, and as I mentioned, it's important to be proactive to attract good businesses to the city that are good paying jobs. And again, by being rated a platinum community, we will attract, and we have attracted small biotech labs, and we have become a destination. When Cambridge, where the prices of Cambridge for rents are sky high, they love Woburn as a destination. We've worked hand in hand with some of the property owners, such as Cummings Property, and again, it's been a good partnership between the city and some of our bigger landlords. And it helps when you are proactive in your approach to helping businesses come in. Just like I said, when we took steps to get that the platinum rating. In addition, investments in our infrastructure, like I mentioned earlier, the new Boston Street Bridge is going to be a significant engine to economic development there and bringing in the types of business we want. Also, we were very successful in obtaining funds, again, through lobbying efforts on the MPO. We received $4.5 million to widen Montville Ave, which was a historical traffic issue. But, working with some of the businesses on Washington Street, those were their concerns, that we needed to alleviate traffic coming into the city and going. And by alleviating traffic, investing in our infrastructure, being proactive in obtaining grants, we were able to obtain $4.5 million to widen Montville Ave, and the traffic is significantly better, and that does help. Traffic is one of the issues businesses look at when they're locating in a city.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon?
Thank you. I think the single biggest factor that attracts businesses to Woburn, I guess I'd say this too, but the biggest is the geography. We're fortunate to be located at the intersection of 95 and 93. Makes us incredibly attractive, convenient to the city, such that even though here in Woburn we shift the bulk of our tax burden to our commercial and business entities, thereby lessening the tax impact on the residents, even though we do that, Woburn is still attractive enough that businesses do want to come here. So I think that's probably the biggest thing we can do. And again, we do maintain a relatively low tax rate for those businesses, even though we're shifting the burden to them. So it's that balance that we strike when we're setting the tax rate each year. We try to make sure that we're not scaring businesses away by raising them too high, but we're also accounting for the fact that the residents who live here deserve a break on their taxes because they are putting up with some of the burdens of being right here at 95 and 93 with these businesses coming and going, and as Scott said, the traffic and the congestion and the things that come with business. So I do think it's all about striking a balance, and the fact that we have businesses continuing to want to come here tells me that we're striking the right balance, and I think we need to continue on that path.
Thank you.
Just
Mayor?
quickly, earlier I mentioned that we're fortunate to have Anderson Station in the train up off of Commerce Way. And one of the things that we have been doing and will continue to do is work with the Chamber of Commerce and through our Casey Haggerty to work to get people from Anderson to where they're going. It's called the last mile, and people, employers will work with us to get from Anderson Station to their location. So that's a very important economic engine we have is Anderson, and we're working to make that even more attractive and make it more usable by providing last mile transportation from Anderson to the different employers in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon?
I'm all set.
Okay. The next topic is public safety, and the first question will be starting with Mr. Concannon. Woburn firefighters are currently basic life support and EMT certified. We outsource advanced life support services to a third party. Some municipalities, like Reading, have brought advanced life support services to employees. Will your administration support the continued outsourcing of these advanced life support services? Please explain why.
Well, I'll tell you that I'll have conversations about the pros and cons of bringing ALS in-house. Many of our neighboring communities have had success doing that, and I think it's time to have a serious conversation about that here in Woburn. There's obviously some initial startup costs. There's training required, certifications, and there has to be a strategic plan to bring ALS here to Woburn. We are spending a lot of money outsourcing it, and it's essentially it's a cost-benefit analysis that has to be done. I do know that there is significant interest from the part of our firefighters and our fire chief and his command staff to do that. I do believe that our folks can achieve that status. I don't think it's going to be something that happens overnight, but there are other communities who have done it in different ways, step by step versus all at once. So I would want to study those that have done it and been successful. Ultimately, I would like to see it happen. I think it's time, and the question is, what's the most efficient and effective way to get to that point so that we have that service provided by our own firefighters here in Woburn.
Thank you. Mayor Galvin?
I'll tell you, before I became mayor, it's something I thought would be good for the city. But when you look at it, when you look at the numbers, and you look at the arrangement that we have now, where we have two rescues running full-time, we have an outsource with right now it's Armstrong. We just put it out to bid, and we got Armstrong. It doesn't cost us anything. We generate money. 50% of the proceeds we get from each run for Medicare and Medicaid runs, and then if it's a private run, we split the proceeds 40%. So we get the money. We don't have to provide the services. Armstrong has paramedics on their chase cars, and we meet them there to pick them up. But it's a situation that's worked very well. Residents are served very well. Public safety is served very well. And again, over the years, we've been able to generate revenues off of that without the added costs, without the added benefits that go along with it. There's no pension costs. If you wanted to start offering ALS, we need a minimum of 12 new paramedics. That would mean they'd have to go back and get their paramedic, probably on city time. So there are some expenses that really need to be considered. And as I said, right now, residents are being served very well by the situation that we have. And we've been able to grow a pretty significant reserve balance in our ambulance account that we've used to purchase other equipment for the fire department and for the benefit of our residents.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon?
Sure. Certainly the money is a factor. It's always a factor. We always have to consider the costs and in some instances the revenue generated. But more importantly, it's the quality of care. And I think there's something to be said for that level of service to be provided by our own people. And as I mentioned earlier, there are different ways of getting to this point. We don't have to immediately embrace ALS for every person in the fire department. There are interim measures you can take. The concept of the chase car, where a qualified trained person is added to the complement of staffing. And there are other entities, other communities around us who have done this in any number of ways. I think it is important to continue that conversation and not simply be governed by the revenue we're receiving. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not governed by the revenue. I'm governed by the fact that we're providing a service to the residents, a good public safety service, and we're generating revenue at the same time. So there is a two-pronged approach, and the expense of going to ALS would probably outweigh the revenues that we get. So I like the approach we have now. It's been working very well, and again, the public is served well by it, and so is the fire station, the fire department.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mayor Galvin. What are your priorities for hiring and training public safety personnel?
That's a good question. For public safety, police and fire, you're talking about?
Just says public safety personnel. I assume that's
Well,
what you're talking about.
DPW could be considered public safety
I think,
too.
yes, I would assume police and fire.
Okay. So with regard to the fire department, the mayor is not the appointing authority. We do work with the chief through human resources to work on that, but the mayor is the appointing authority of the police department, and I do work with the chief of police. One of the difficulties with hiring in the police department is civil service itself. Civil service the civil service system is archaic, and it doesn't help you in accomplishing the things you want. It's very difficult under civil service to diversify the department. They have stricter rules that make it difficult. In the past, we've tried to go out for minority lists, weren't able to. But what we're looking to do, and it's a difficult process right now, is to get out of civil service. That would allow us to set our own standards in hiring that still have to comply with the overall civil service standards, but it would make it easier for the city to hire different candidates, more attractive candidates. Right now, we're actually having a difficult time filling vacancies. We're having a difficult time because of civil service itself. For instance, we just put out a request to hire 8 new officers, 8 new reserve officers, which will become police officers. And the quality of candidates and the number of candidates was disappointing, and that's because of the civil service restraints. And if we're able to get out of that, I think we could write our own. We could write our own requirements. We could actually go and recruit students off campus. We could include different standards for diversifying the police department in a more effective way. So that's a challenge we're facing now. We are working on it. To get out of civil service right now is challenging because you have to get approval at the legislative level, and right now they're not putting any of those requests out as approvals.
Thank you. Mr. Concannon.
Thank you. So my priorities for hiring and training public safety personnel are what you'd expect they are, to get the very best people we can to protect our city and to provide them with the very best training we can. I do agree with Scott's concerns about civil service and the limiting nature of their process. Civil service is known as a fair system, just not a very good system. And I would absolutely want to take a closer look at opting out of civil service. Some neighboring communities have done that, and it's opened up their hiring process considerably. They've attracted better candidates. They have more input into what they deem to be the best qualifications versus a simple test score. So I do think we need to continue that discussion about whether it's time for Woburn to actually opt out of civil service. We would have to make sure, obviously, there'd be flexibility given to the community in the hiring process, but we'd have to make sure that the rights of the members were protected. That is one of the benefits of civil service. So opting out is definitely on the table. In terms of training, I do think we need to do a better job of offering training to our public safety members. These are changing and challenging times, and training is an investment. It costs money, but it's something we should be doing more of at every turn. Increased staffing levels allow more training, and just an understanding of the nature of public safety staffing would allow us to carve out more time for training. I'm not going to go into my resume. It's posted probably all over town at this point. But I do have a public safety background. But even despite that, one of the things I would do more than anything is listen to our experts. I've had conversations with our police chief and our fire chief about their needs. And I think if we listen to them a little bit more and take their expert advice a little bit more, we can advance not only the hiring, but also, in this case, more importantly, the training that's needed to keep up with the changing times and our growing community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
Just quick rebuttal, Mike. I meet with the chiefs both weekly and more as required. Never have they expressed any concerns about the level of funding or the amount of training. In fact, they both have told me that they're very pleased with the amount of funding that they have for training. So I have not heard that. I do want to give a plug to the police department. They are an accredited department, and they go through a number of steps to get there. But under the chief's leadership, they've been continuing with being an accredited police station, which requires a certain amount of training to be met. So again, just to be clear, I meet with them regularly and have not heard any concerns about the funding that they receive for training.
Mr. Concannon?
Well, it might come as a shock, it might not, that there are some people who work in the city of Woburn who may not be, they may not feel free to be candid with some of their concerns, but I can assure you that these concerns have been expressed to me. And it is a priority of mine to make sure that we are, in fact, hiring the best people, training the best people, and providing the very best services that we can to the residents of Woburn. And again, my goal would be to listen more to our experts. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to move to the questions that the two candidates have submitted to each other. I will read them, and we will start with Mr. Concannon's question to Mayor Galvin. So Mayor Galvin needs to be ready to answer this one. And this is what Mr. Concannon said. If I am fortunate enough to be elected Woburn's next mayor on November 7th, could I count on you to be part of a respectful, cooperative, and professional transition from November to January so that the interests of the residents are well served?
Well, you know, that is a great question. I hope it doesn't happen, Mike, but it's a great question. And I'll always remember this, and you may too, when George Poole, who many of us know from the Veteran Services, does a great job with Veterans and Memorial Day celebrations. And one of the things that when I first was elected, George mentioned that the great thing about our country and the great thing about cities and states is there's always a peaceful transition of power, except for when Donald Trump refused to leave. But there always is, Mike, and I would absolutely help you with everything that you needed. I would, my office would be open to you anytime you want during that period, and I'd be proud. That would be part of what a mayor does. I'd be proud to say, hey, the voters have spoken. This is what we're going to do, and I'd help you with anything you need.
Very good.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. The question was premised originally on the concept of, or the how things have been going in the campaign. There's been some increased negativity. There's been some personal type of stuff happening, and I'm hoping that however this plays out, we can move past that. It's been my goal to run a professional campaign, and it's my intention, if I'm successful, to lead in a professional manner. And I'm pleased and happy to hear that if that transition were to occur, it would be cordial, pleasant, professional, and without any negativity.
Absolutely, but I take exception to the negativity, and I will get to that at a certain point, but there has been no negativity, Mike. There's been no attacks on anybody. Anything that I point out has to do with you and some of the limitations you might have, but there has been no negativity. I think we can get to that in a little while, but there has been absolutely no negativity. In fact, what I find negative is that there have been outside forces coming into the city that continue to knock me, and it seems like you're embracing that.
Mayor.
You brought it up, I didn't.
Did you have something more to say, Mr. Concannon?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of outside forces coming in, I mean, essentially what Scott's referencing is there are city employees who are expressing incredible frustration with what they've deemed to be the lack of leadership and the lack of respect and open communication and any type of collaborative dialogue. And it's not just the teachers and the firefighters. I'm hearing it from a whole bunch of people. And what we have is the teachers expressing their concern. And their parent union, the MTA, has sent out some mailers. I haven't seen anything negative, terrible, or horrible about it. And from my perspective, the only thing I'm embracing is hardworking City of Woburn employees, desperate for leadership, wanting to see me become the mayor. I appreciate their support, and I look forward to working with them if I'm successful.
Thank you. I think we all have gotten the point now.
Not quite, but.
The question that Mayor Galvin has to Mr. Concannon: union involvement has always played a part in our democratic election process. This year's mayor's race has included an unprecedented presence by local unions. One of those unions represent the Woburn firefighters. I believe they are seeking support to receive pension credit as soon as they are appointed to the reserve list. Do you support the firefighters on this initiative, and if so, why?
So this question came up a couple of years ago. It actually came up as a petition to the city council, and we looked at it. We met with those putting it forward. We received input from the retirement board. We researched the law. Essentially what happened was there was a set of rules in place for reserve firefighters in the Commonwealth and how their time on the reserve list should be treated or counted. And that went on for a long time, and a lot of people got hired under that set of rules. And then at some point, PERAC, the Public Employees Retirement Commission, amended that, changed those rules. And not only did they change them for those folks coming on from that point on, but they went back and changed them for those people who had already been on and already been in the reserve position. So we looked at it. We had a couple of meetings. We discussed it. We researched the law a little bit, but it kind of died on the vine. The firefighters who were the original petitioners didn't push it further. So it actually remains sitting in city council committee. But I guess my answer would be this. I'm a believer in the rules, and I don't think you should change the rules in the middle of the game. So I do think it's fair that we reconsider this issue, and we try to determine if it's fair that we count some of the time that those firefighters were on the reserve list towards their actual time. And the provision that was being discussed was that it wasn't free. They weren't getting free time. They weren't getting free credit. They would have to pay in the equivalent of what they would have had to pay in if they were actually employees. And I guess it should say, if you don't know already, the reserve firefighters aren't like the reserve police officers. They don't actually work. They just stand by waiting for a chance to go to the academy. But in that meantime, they're not eligible to go to work for any other fire department. So if another department calls and says, we're ready to hire you tomorrow, you can start work tomorrow, they've already committed to Woburn's reserve. They stay on our reserve list. It's not the same with the police department. So as in the interest of fairness, I do think we should take a look at that, and we should make sure that the rules were in place at the time are respected. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for that explanation. I learned something tonight about that. So with that, I think we are going to move to our closing.
no, don't I? Oh, you don't?
You can.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't,
Yeah.
didn't know you wanted to rebuttal to your own question, but go ahead.
Well, I want to rebut his answer, not my question, right? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. There were no changes in the rules. Pension reform laws in 2010 eliminated abuses that inflated city pensions costs at the expense of taxpayers. This union demand was one of them. Full-time paid firemen are selected from a reserve list, which consists of up to 18 candidates, and a candidate usually averages 2 years or longer on the reserve list before being appointed as a full-time position. During this time, they don't work, they don't get paid, but they still work other jobs. This will allow these firefighters to retire early based on the time that they never worked for the city at a substantial expense to taxpayers, which I find unconscionable. And it's my understanding, Mike, that you and other aldermen have met just recently with the union and were posed that question, and you committed to it.
If that's a question, I'll answer it. I didn't commit to anything. What I committed to is having the conversation, and what I just said to the audience here, my firm belief that the rules that were in place at the time when those folks signed on should be respected. And I do disagree with your conclusion that the rules were not changed. Our own retirement board came to us to advise us, and we have memos detailing to us the changes that were made. There was a new interpretation of the rules that had been in place, and it adversely affected many members. And just to be fair, as I said, this would involve those reserve firefighters paying money into the system, the money that they would have had deducted from their checks had they been working. And just to follow up on this, I think this is an opportunity for us to take a better look at how we're actually using our reserve firefighters. Because one thing I know for sure, when our firefighters get to the firefighting academy, they're behind the 8 ball. Most of the other communities have been working with those reserves, training them, familiarizing them with the equipment, and actually putting to the work in many instances. And I see that as a potential opportunity to help out with some of the dispatching issues we're having at the new fire station and the burdens we're putting on these on these full-time firefighters. That might lessen the impact. It might also prepare our firefighters better for when they get to the academy. And again, my general statement is that the rules that were in place should be the rules that we follow. And that's only fair. To me, it's a fairness issue.
Thank you.
Can I just say
Mayor? Yes.
one real quick? Because the rules didn't change. It was interpreted incorrectly by PERAC, and it subsequently went all the way to the Mass Supreme Judicial Court, who said, no, you're interpreting wrong. That is not the way it should go, and that was why they emphatically said, Mike, they emphatically said that these people would not be grandfathered because PERAC was making a mistake, which when someone else makes a mistake doesn't mean it was wrong. The Supreme Judicial Court stood with Governor Patrick and the other legislators who took a difficult stand to wipe out pension abuses, and this was clearly one of them. To disagree. Okay.
And on that note, we will now go to closing statements, and they will be in the reverse order of the opening statements, which means that Mr. Concannon will have a 3-minute closing statement.
I'm not sure if my microphone's still working. As Ronald Reagan famously said, I'm paying for this microphone.
Do you want to come up here? No? I was going to say, I don't think I can. Oh, they're going to help you out. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No worries. Great, thank you. My friend Omar suggested that I stand up and walk around with this, but that's not really my style, so I'll leave that to him. So in closing, I'll just say thank you again. I appreciate Woburn Public Media and Ms. Copey and Scott and the audience. I appreciate this long process that we've been going through, this campaign process. I appreciate it now more than I ever did, I can assure you of that. And I look forward to 2 weeks from today when we get the result. I've tried to make my case. As I said, it's been through door knocking and campaigning and talking to groups large and small and interviews and articles and statements, and you can find a lot of the greater detail on the website. But essentially, what this comes down to, in my opinion, is the difference between management and leadership, and not so much the what we've been doing in Woburn, but the how we've been doing it. And I think if you've been paying attention at all over the last several years, you would agree with me, I hope you'd agree, that there's definitely room for improvement in how we're doing things. And hopefully you'll agree that it's time for a change in how we do those things. And I think the change is that delta between managing and leading. What we're talking about is a position of leading people. That's the mayor's job. Creating an environment where the people who are delivering the services to the residents of Woburn can thrive and can meet their maximum potential to deliver the very best service to you. We're talking about police and fire and DPW workers and teachers and library employees and all of the people who are providing the service to you. I hear them. I think you hear them too. I don't know if Scott hears them, but they are crying out for leadership, collaboration, transparency, back and forth, two-way dialogue. And I think the experience I've had over the years in my prior career, my 10 years on the council now, 2 as president, I think I have that leadership experience and those skills to bring to the table right now to improve how things are going here in Woburn. I was going to take some time to explain some of the negative accusations that have been hurled at me. But as I said in a recent mailing, I hesitate to do that because I think I know Scott pretty well, and I know that he knows who I am as a person. He knows that these things he's accusing me of doing or potentially doing are not true. I'm not in anybody's pocket. I'm nobody's puppet. I can't be bought by anybody. And this conflict of interest this narrative that's been created that allegedly would prevent me from doing my job, I can assure you it's not the case. I will be capable and able to do the job of mayor, and I will tell you that the legal restrictions regarding contracts and relationships with unions, there is the rest of the story beyond the conflict of interest. And it's something known as the rule of necessity, which will allow me to do what I need to do to manage, lead the city, and to have a positive, strong relationship with every union in the city. It is not my intention to micromanage and be the person sitting across the table at every union meeting demanding that things go my way. We have qualified experts in this city who can handle the bulk of that. The mayor's job is to set the tone, create the environment, and allow those who are doing the work to flourish. Thank you very much.
Sure. Yep. The prosperity and future of our city and its residents has always been and continues to be my #1 priority. Under my proven leadership as your mayor in collaboration with the city council, school committee, department heads, and dedicated municipal employees, we've delivered impressive results for our residents and our taxpayers. And Mike, over the past 6 years, you sat there. I've submitted budgets. I've championed capital projects. You've always agreed with them. Doing that takes leadership, takes the ability to collaborate with people. So it's happening, and I'm kind of confused that you're referring to maybe a couple unions that are disenchanted, and that's the story that you want to put out there. But Woburn's becoming an increasingly desirable place to live and raise a family, and it's thrived due to the strategic investments that we've made. Despite all that we've accomplished during some of the most difficult times in our history, we will not sit back and rest on our laurels. We must continue to be proactive in addressing the present and future concerns of the city, such as PFAS removal from our water, immigration issues, substance misuse, education and treatment, and public safety, as well as our infrastructure. This means professionally managing the city's finances and aggressively pursuing grants and other funding sources to minimize the burden on our taxpayers. It means maintaining the hard-earned AAA bond rating, the highest bond rating available, and to continue delivering top-notch municipal services while maintaining the lowest tax rate in the area. The choice for mayor is clear. Over the years, I have fairly negotiated numerous collective bargaining agreements and ruled on grievances and disciplinary hearings with our city unions and employees, all in the best interest of taxpayers and seniors living on fixed incomes. My opponent does not have that experience. And we've said this, and again, it's not an attack on his family. He has ethical constraints that would disqualify him from negotiating and participating in collective bargaining agreements, police, fire, and public works, because his family members work there. And again, it's not an attack on his family members. It's about the disqualification, your disqualification, Mike, from participating in one of the most important fiduciary duties of a mayor. Salary and benefits represent a major portion of our city budget. Budgetary spending determines taxes. Mike cannot be involved in this most important process, collective bargaining. That controls spending on salaries. This is a critical and consequential distinction, and taxpayers have the right to know. This is an advisory on the rule of necessity, and it does not allow you to participate. It allows you to appoint someone to do it, but once you do it, you cannot have any further contact or discussions about that contract. That's where the conflict lies. I will not, and I am not being influenced by any special groups from outside the city like the MTA, which has been telling us what Woburn needs. My opponent, as much as he says he's embraced this statewide union, I'm talking about the statewide union and their self-serving attempt to influence this election. This is wrong. For me, it's been an honor to serve you as your mayor, and I respectfully ask your support on November 7th. Thank you.
Can we have a round of applause for both candidates? Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to the technical people who helped us with the microphones, and to the two timekeepers who worked very hard this whole time. And don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. And with that, we'll say good evening.